Thank you, Graham. And a new presentation, well, it's not new, but another presentation that we offer, especially for conferences and especially for organizations and for building your teams, is Unleashing Your Greatness. And this is really about understanding that with the changes in the world and with us looking into the future, how do we continue to make sure that we unleash the potential of our people, unleash the potential of ourselves as leaders into the future? I want you to do something for me. Turn and look at a person next to you and say to them, "You are great." Do it right now. Great. You see what just happened? Everybody starts to smile because it's nice to hear the words, "You are great." How many of us hear this every time we come into work? As we come through the doors, people start to clap and ululate. Yeah, there's always one or two, right? Maybe not at work. Maybe not at work. When we go home, after a hard day at work, you've had a terrible day, you had to deal with customers, and it's just been awful. And then as you come through the driveway, you hear the commotion inside the house. You know, as the spouse and the kids start ululating and clapping. Yay! Yay, it comes. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you have that at home? You must have a dog, don't you? Because we don't hear this every day. And so as a result, we fail to see greatness in ourselves. And so I took some time to look at this topic of unleashing your greatness. What is the key? What is it that makes some people great at what they do, some organizations great at what they do, and others not? And so greatness is not just about what we achieve, but it's a code, it's a way of being. I grew up in a rural village in northern KwaZulu-Natal in a place called KwaHlabisa. I was raised by my grandmother, uMandlela Wakhumalo, and it was my grandmother who helped this young man understand that it's not where you come from that counts. I know, the lights are just getting dimmer and dimmer. I'm not doing it, okay? For effect or anything, no. So my grandmother helped me to understand that it's not where you come from that counts. It's not your background that counts. It's what's in you that counts. It's what's in you that counts. And so unleashing your greatness is about tapping into that potential that's already there and eliciting it. And so I have 5 keys that are not things that you've never heard before. But these are still the basic principles, the basic skills that are needed to unleashing your greatness. And so the 5 keys are be who you be, which is about distinction. It's about pursuing excellence. It's about living your values. It's about unleashing a winning attitude. And then lastly, about creating the future. I'm going to just spend a little bit more time on the first one, and then the rest I'm just going to rush over. But the first one, be who you be. Can you say that with me? Be who you be. And some of you are saying, oh my goodness, here we go again. It's bad English. And we know, Bantu education and all of that. But really, this phrase for me really captures something very powerful. And it speaks about when I travel to the US, I enjoy hanging out with African Americans. And African Americans always have a way of saying things. So instead of be all you can be or be what you can be, they say, be who you be, man. They put a twist on things. And really what it means is that to embrace and to unleash your greatness, you need to embrace who you are. And so it's about finding that distinction, that thing that sets you apart from everybody else. But also embracing who you can be. Often we say, this is how I am, take it or leave it, baby. But the reality is that if you're going to unleash your greatness, you need to also embrace who you can be. But we spend too much time comparing ourselves to others. Who are you comparing yourself to? Don't answer that. Take a look.
Hey, nice dog.
Yeah, this is Piper, your bred border collie. Watch this. Piper, fetch. Good boy, Piper. You're such a smart dog. So, what can your dog do?
Fergus, Bud Light.
Fresh, smooth, real, Bud Light. It's all here.
You see, as long as we're comparing ourselves to others, we fail to see the greatness in us. And I know this. I know this because I experienced it. When I was in high school, I'd won a science project for something that we had done, and someone from the education department was coming to my school to present a certificate, and the whole ceremony was going to be done at the assembly. And I did not want to go in front of the whole school because of my shoes. Don't look at my shoes now, they are fine. But back then they were not. And they were torn. And I was not unique, before you get feeling too sorry for me. And some kids at my school didn't even have shoes. But the moment you were singled out and put up front, then that's when people sort of like take the opportunity to make fun of you. And I remember going home and my grandmother said, "What's wrong?" I said, I won this project and I'm going to be presented with a certificate. I don't want to go in front of the whole school. And she said, "Why?" I said, "Because of my shoes." And she said, "It's okay. We'll speak to your grandfather." And she went and spoke to my grandfather. My grandfather pulled out his special shoes. You know the ones, right? Those two-toned ones. You know, the brown and white ones. The ones he used to wear in Soweto as a young man with his, Stetson hat. So he pulled them out and I tried them on, and you know what was wrong with the shoes? They were a bit too big. And so my grandmother said, "It's okay, we'll stuff some newspapers in front of the shoes, try them on." You know what I'm talking about, some of you do. And put the shoes on, and they fit. And she said, "How do they fit?" And I was like, "They're okay, Coco." Because I was feeling sorry for myself. I started tearing up and crying, and my grandmother realized what was going on. And then often, don't look at me, because it happens to you too. And with all the work that you do and what you're dealing with at work and the customers and all of that, and sometimes we feel sorry for ourselves, all this work that I put in and nobody even notices and so on and so on, and we go on, and my grandmother saw what was going on, and she said, "Stop that right now. Stop feeling sorry for yourself, because it's you who's going to be on that stage and not all of those people you're comparing yourself to." And if she could have said it, she would have said, "Be who you be, man." And so the real key to really unleashing your greatness starts with finding what makes you stand out. What is that distinction? And so I challenged leaders and team leaders to help find a distinction in terms of creating a winning culture in the organization. Ask the question, what is it that sets us apart? What is the why we do what we do? And then focus on that. And so understanding that your distinction is the most important. And then I talk about pursuing excellence. And this is a no-brainer, but often what happens in our organizations is that many of us, we settle for good enough. We know we've been doing the same thing over and over again. So we get into the mode of copy and paste. We copy and paste. We've done it for one client, we'll do it for another one. And so what I challenge my audiences around this is that we need to say good enough is not good enough. And often what happens is that excellence is not common these days. You know what is common? It's this. The winner of It's Not My Job award, right? And you've heard the phrase. It's not in my job description is a phrase we often hear. And this is about pursuing excellence, is about taking ownership. And so the third key that really is at the center of this presentation is about living your values. And I'm passionate about this because I really believe that the cultures of our organizations are dependent on the values that we live. And so the question is, do our people know the values that we live by? Are we able to hire and fire people based on the values, whether they're living them out or not? And so when we look at this, one of the things that I've been part of is Hotlines using television and media to challenge South Africans to live their values. And when we did this project, when we started with this project back in 2006, I remember Nelson Mandela agreed to be part of our project, and I got a chance to meet him as he was going to do our opening sequence for our films. And I remember the day. And I had met Mandela about 2 years before this as part of a volunteer team with the Salvation Army. But when I met him on this day as a project manager at Hotlines, I was a bit nervous. And so there I was standing, making sure that my tie was in the right place. And then he walks in, If you ever met Nelson Mandela, you know how tall he was. And you would be looking up. So here I was looking up, and he was already walking with a cane. And he walks into the room and he says, "Oh, young man, good to see you again." And I'm standing there thinking, there's no way you can remember, me. And while I'm still thinking this, he says, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, "You are Nelson Mandela." But this was the man. Equality for Nelson, and apparently he did this to a lot of people. I wasn't the only one. He always made the other person feel like they were the most important person, because equality for him was a value. It wasn't just a campaign slogan. It was something he lived. And even at events, when he did events, Nelson Mandela, the security detail, they knew you have to make time for him to shake the hands of the people who are doing service jobs, the police, the caterers, and the cleaners. And Mandela wanted to shake their hands. Maya Angelou put it this way: people will always forget what we said. People will forget what we did. But people will never forget how we made them feel. And that's what values do. And values then are not just words that we say, it's what we live out. And so when we inculcate a culture of living our values, it shapes our culture, and then our culture shapes our performance. And so the fourth key in this presentation is about unleashing a winning attitude, believing that attitude is key to unleashing your greatness. Because one CEO put it this way. Jim Jarnett of Oakley said, I want our people, when they walk in, to be so stoked they can hardly stand it. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you are so stoked you can hardly wait to go back to the office? Some of you, right? But for most of us, it's like, wow. But he's talking about passion. And so to unleash greatness, it's about how do we sort of like unleash this passion in our people. So normally going to work on Mondays like this. On Fridays like this. Going home. Some of you are relating too well to that, so I'll stop. But attitude is key. As a leader, you play a key role in the environment of your team. And so your attitude, how you show up, is important. And you know what I'm talking about. Some days you just need to look at the leader, as they walk through the door, you're like, ooh, I better get away from them today. Because attitude impacts everything. And one of the things I've learned by living in a place where for almost 6 months of the year, we're under snow and we have to deal with minus 25 degrees Celsius and all of that, is that you need a thermostat. Because a thermostat tells the temperature in your house what it needs to be. That's exactly what your attitude does. And so I look at that as well in this presentation. And then lastly, we look at creating the future, that the key to unleashing your greatness is understanding that you have the power to create the future. As Victor Hugo put it, that there's nothing like a dream to create the future. Often, the reason that many of us don't reach what's possible for us, don't reach our greatness, is because we stop dreaming. We stop dreaming of what is possible for us. So I challenge you to give up your excuses, and I challenge you to look for the opportunity and seize the opportunity of a lifetime in the lifetime of that opportunity. And then just to end, here's a quote by Alan Kay, that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And so in unleashing your greatness, it's about understanding you have the power to create the future that you want. And so unleash your greatness and be who you be, man. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.